Hey, it's pronounced Vag and I'm Adam, and that's Grant's GTI back there, and we're gonna put the 034 intercooler on it and show you how to do it. Before we get into the intercooler install, I wanna show you a little bit of what Grant has done to this 2019 Rabbit Edition Urano Gray GTI. He's got the 034 fresh air intake carbon fiber. This is actually pretty neat. I haven't seen this one. It has the opening straight there in the back for cooling to the turbo, and it replaces the OEM piece here and connects to the OEM box with the X34 open air intake, and then he's got the 034 inlet elbow there to the turbo as well. Some other great themed things happening here for this color, and let's do some beauty shots right now. Grant is going to reveal what this thing looks like. It's an intercooler, but it's a black one. It has the 034 branding on top here, which I don't think any of that's going to actually be visible once it's all packed in there. But yeah, we'll take a little bit closer look at this as we work with it and show you some details. One of the major design differences in the 034 Motorsport intercooler to point out is that it is a tube and fin design as opposed to a bar and plate. The tube and fin design typically uses less material than a bar and plate, making it weigh less. So depending on the activities you're performing, whether it's drag racing, track racing, or just driving on the street, you might want a little bit more or a little bit less weight on the nose. Where the benefits come in of having less weight means that you have less material, which means a quicker heat transfer or dissipation to have cooler intake air temperatures. But that all depends on the movement of air, which means this may be a better intercooler suited for street driving or a lapping day at the track. All right, for this, we're gonna start underneath to remove the bumper. We're gonna take off, there's a handful of T20s. There's one here in the middle. We're gonna take off the splash shield first. Go ahead and start zipping those off. And there's 3 on this side and 4 on the other side, and then there's some kind of leading T20s along the front of the bumper here that you'll remove to remove from the detach from the fender liner, and then we'll work our way up into the wheel wells and then on top to take the grill out. Now we're going to take off some of the T20s. You're missing one? Well, that'll make it easier. You got to take off, what is it, 1, 2, 3, and I think 4 T20s that are up in this wheel well. This is a good opportunity to show you that I'm taking advantage of tricks I've learned from others about keeping track of my screws and where they came from. With all of these T20s, you want to make sure and see that they're all the same size. On this one, when we've gone through here in the fender liner, there's one screw that goes straight up into the corner of this bumper, and that one is just a little bit longer than the other. So you want to make sure to keep track of that one specifically for that spot. All right, so we're gonna start by taking out the 2 T25 screws in the top of the grill here. That's positive. So it's quite possible that many of you have already figured this out that have a GTI, but I have an R and I don't look at this, the 7.5 GTI very often. But let me grab my screwdriver. So we have now, we're just getting our long screwdriver in and pushing down on these little black tabs as we pull out on the bumper, and it's allowing the bumper to come loose. Oh yeah! Oh my God! It's working! Straight out. All right, just want to show you some detail of these clips real quick. This is where we were reaching down and pushing in on these clips. There's actually 4 on each side. I was looking down in here and I didn't see on the other side of this shroud that there's actually 1 on the far outside on both sides here. So on each side, because GTI, there's the connector for the fog light on both sides, and then because it's 7.5, there's the connector directly behind the badge. But there's a couple of these little clips that you can pop off and get a little bit more room here. So here's this connector. You squeeze the sides and you're able to pull down and you'll hear a little, yeah, that exactly, thank you. Our next step is to essentially just take off a bunch of stuff that's on the front here. We're now removing these brace pieces, and there's 1, 2, 3 bolts on each. We'll completely remove that, and then we're going to tackle removing the headlights completely. quick note that there are two different length bolts. The long one goes here in the back and the two short ones go here in the front. On this driver's side cross brace here, or brace over the headlight, there is the hood release, so we're gonna have to remove that and disconnect it so that we can take off more of the assembly up here. And one note about the GTI that I don't have to deal with on the R is that the windshield washer reservoir is here, so it's also attached to this piece, so we're gonna have to disconnect that as well.
Slides up. If we can't,
There it goes. Oh, it slides up, not down? Oh my God. All right, so on this washer fluid reservoir, there's a tab here and it actually pulls up. We thought it pushed down, but that wouldn't have made sense. So it is able to pull up out of there. And then we were able to rotate this piece to access the backside of these little pieces. We had to pinch to be able to push that out of the bracket. Okay, so to open and release this, we're gonna take a screwdriver and just push that back. There we go. And now swing that trap door open, dude.
there it goes.
There it is. Sweet. And then that ball just pops out of that socket and you're able to disconnect those two pieces. Perfect. On both of the headlights, there are three bolts that need to be, actually two bolts that need to be removed, one that needs to be loosened. This one up here on the front is an adjustment bolt. There's one right behind it that needs to be completely removed and taken out. There is this one here that just needs to be loosened. That's a T30. All of them are T30. And then there's one here on the side that needs to be completely removed. So remove, loosen, remove, and then take off your electrical connector and we'll pull that out. The tab is right here on the side. And if you're able to depress it with your finger, you can get a screwdriver in there and help pry it off, but just be really careful that you don't break any of the plastic. This is the electrical connector on both sides. Depress that and use a screwdriver just very lightly to help slide that off. Our next bit is that we're going to remove this intake duct. If you have a different intake, or I guess even the stock intake, this separates here, so you only have to take that piece off since it connects to the core support. If you have a different intake that is fully integrated, you'll have to take more of that off. All right, the next bit is to remove the shrouds that go on the side here that will direct the air in. There's three clips that hold this on. Yeah, you'll just kind of push the tip down and then pull it straight out. There you go.
Now I see.
And then there's two more down here. There's one here,
There we go.
one further down. And then the way like that thing is kind of flexible and you'll just kind of, there's also maybe some like wires and stuff that are kind of integrated into the bits there. So just be careful when you're yanking it out.
But it is much better like clipped around the frame stuff here.
Next is to disconnect the horns on both sides. Let's see what the other side looks like. It's probably the same.
Right spot.
I'll just pop this one out, get my thumb under there, slide it off. There we go. Next, we're gonna disconnect some connectors here. There's crash sensor on the passenger side and the driver's side. The way these work is that the red tab you will push down just slightly. Go ahead, bud. You'll slide it down just a little bit. It'll only go down that far, and then you'll depress on the red tab. There you go. Press that in just with your finger, and it should slide the whole thing off of there. I forget what sensor that is, but you want to just slide that off as well. The driver's side's a little tricky because the red tab is not visible, so you'll have to do it a little bit blind, probably just with your fingernail, and be careful. We are now going to remove the crash bar. There are 4 16mm bolts on each side here that if you have the all-track belly pan like I do, you might have additional brackets and stuff here, so you'll have to remove that. But since there's 2 of us, he's going to remove 3 of the 4 and then just loosen the upper outer ones. And as we are both standing on each side, we'll just use our fingers to remove and take it off together. All right, so we've got most of the frame bolts out. One thing that I forgot is that there's the T30 here on each side, and that is ultimately what's holding up this core support. And if you tried ripping everything off or just let it drop, it would fall or at least get stressed. So we found some stuff in my garage to at least support it so that there's a little bit of gap there. You know, not letting it fall is ideal. There it goes. All right. That's fine. That'll be fine staying in there. Ooh. So one other bit that I forgot is a little bit different on this car than my Golf R, because I took these off from the beginning, was these other T30s that are holding the bits together. So there's these two up here by the hood release, and then there is one on each side right here. That will allow all of that bit to come off. And I believe there might be some clips here, so we'll check that out as we are pulling this off here. All right, so now check this out, how this is all kind of separated here. There's just some clips that are holding this in down here that should come off pretty easily. I think we might be able to get a screwdriver in there to pop them out. You're out? Yep. I'm out. How else is it connected here? Oh, there's another T30 down below. There it is. Wiggle you off there. Sweet. So our next bit is to squeeze these white connectors. They're super stiff. You just want to be super careful that you don't break them, because if you break them, then obviously they're broken. But they're going to push together, and then we're going to pry the frame out from them. So that's why I've got this bit here. I'm going to apply some pressure while Grant is trying to relieve those. Oh no, you did broken. What you weren't supposed to. I mean, it's not that broken, but
right,
it's still broken. There we go. We definitely now have to take the condenser off. There's a shroud that's on here that we're going to pop off. There's a clip down here at the bottom, and you can see as I push it up from the bottom, it just undoes itself, and then we'll be able to remove the condenser. Yeah, you got a little bit more stuff to deal with over there. We can probably actually leave it the way it is, and then the condenser should just lift up out of these tabs. Let's see, the top might be kind of clipped in a little bit. Yeah, just a little screwdriver just to kind of like pry it out a little bit. There we go. Okay. Yep. Just at the top here, well, now it's being covered, but there's a little tab that is covering the top there. So I just got my screwdriver in behind it, twisted it, and was able to use my hand on the bottom to just push it up while I was twisting and releasing it. And Grant's gonna do the same without breaking it. We are at a point now where we have the condenser kind of swung out, supported by a bucket, but there's some flexible lines back here, so nothing's being bent. You'll see, these black plastic, not plastic, but rubber hoses for the AC condenser. And then Grant's gonna just pull that wire loom out of there, and then the next bit is to lift up the intercooler out of the frame. I'll show you on the 034 intercooler. There's these things here that will slot down into a grommet, and we'll be able to lift it up and out. No? Oh, almost. There we go.
And it slips between the condenser here?
Yep.
Okay.
Just hold that, and that'll come out right there.
Cool. That allows us to be more flexible now that that's out.
Yes, yeah, and it can, I think I even had it almost 90 degrees out in when I did it on my car. All right, our next step, Grant's gonna go ahead and loosen up that hose clamp on there, and we're gonna get those separated on both sides. And once those are separated on both sides, there's the clips right here on top that we'll be able to depress and separate the radiator from the intercooler. And then we should just be able to pick the intercooler. There's also these little bits here where the radiator actually sits in the intercooler. So we'll have to pick up the radiator out of the intercooler, and then we'll be able to take it out. Just do something to separate it without breaking it.
Right.
I'm gonna try and do it one-handed over here. Oh boy, it's a tough one. I'm gonna end up stabbing myself. Jeez, man. It's just that easy.
Yeah, I went in.
All right, so we have these top clips off right there. We have the intercooler hoses disconnected, and now you can kind of see this bit of the radiator needs to either lift out, or the intercooler needs to drop from the radiator, and the intercooler can come right out. I'll hold this side up. All right, let's do a quick comparison of the intercoolers. I'm gonna weigh myself first. No way. Hold on. There's no way I'm over 200 pounds. Okay, let's say 205. I'll try and stand on it the same exact way. I'm now holding the OEM radiator, not radiator, intercooler. So what is that, plus 7 pounds? We'll call
6.8.
6.8 pounds. We'll call it 7, we'll round up. And now I'm gonna pick up the 034 unit. And that is plus like 17 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 versus 17. That's pretty light for an aftermarket intercooler. Let's just do a quick little check on the thickness on this too. This is almost 2 inches thick, 1.97, and the thickness of this OEM one, just at the top here, is 1.1. So you get, I mean, you can obviously see the size difference. The volume is that much greater. It's black, it looks cool. All right, so we're at the point where it is time to start assembling and get this intercooler back on the car. But with the 034 unit, it's so big that it requires some trimming. And so I wanted to show in detail, and you can see some lines on there, exactly where they recommend making trims. After we do every trim, I just want to fit this on here to see how it actually fits with the intercooler, to make sure that I followed their guide right, and even though I modified a little bit of what their guide is, that it fits really well and it's just easy to follow. The very first thing that they recommend is cutting off the left of this tab on the passenger side. I believe what is going to happen is that the intercooler pushes the condenser forward and it will just end up hitting here on the frame. So hacking that off is okay because it sits directly in the intercooler here, and this is just hanging out over here, not really doing anything. The next bit here, in their instructions, they recommend cutting off essentially this entire long rectangle. But if you look on the back side here, there's actually some gusseting that helps support the frame here. And based on the images that I've seen already, I think that the intercooler will still fit with this gusset here. It may not, so we may end up having to trim that out, but I want to check that out first, and I'm gonna cut that out, and then we will fit and see what's up. Over on the other side, kind of the same thing. I made sure to see what we would be cutting into or not cutting into. They recommend to cut out this little area here, and then coming down, they actually recommend cutting all that out. I want to see if I can keep that gusseting that's back there, so I'm gonna shave mine a little bit shorter than they recommend, and then you just follow all the way straight down and cut that out. And because, again, of the width of the intercooler, and I believe because it's pressing forward in the frame, that's how it's gonna fit. It's so small, how do I hold it? All right, so this is on the passenger side. We're looking at the back side of the frame. Up here is the top, down here's the bottom. I'm just gonna pick this up a little bit. All right, so I think this is something that maybe we should have done before we made our first cut, but we got a little wiser as we went along. We've already made this cut here, and we've put the intercooler into the frame, and we can now understand why you're trimming the things you have to trim. I don't know that this is fitting down here properly, but the way, obviously the reason why you have to cut this out is because this attachment point for the condenser goes in, so that's very clear. Some of this needs to get trimmed out because the intercooler is coming out forward from the frame, and there's also some pressure that we might have to actually additionally cut some down here. We'll see. We'll do a little bit at a time. One of the other things that we're noticing is that on our initial cut, you definitely don't have to go as far over as recommended in the instructions. So following this down, there's actually a little bit of pressure here, so I'll probably end up cutting out some of this notch straight down here to relieve that. The end tank is sitting on top of the frame there, so I'm gonna notch that out so it sits properly, try to take out as little as possible, but you can see that the intercooler is sitting properly in the grommets. So we'll just kind of finesse this a little bit and fitting into there, and then we will test fit with the condenser on top as well. Okay, here's where we're at. We've made some cuts. We've taken out a majority of a chunk here. We've gone all the way down the side of the end tank. We're having a little bit of contact here, but I'm gonna wait and see how cutting some of this other side ends up making that fit. We definitely had to cut out a little notch here for this bracket. We cut out a large chunk here. Now we're kind of faced with additional contact on the front here. On the back side here, we're making quite a bit of contact with this kind of structural piece here. So instead of cutting this all the way back, what we ended up doing was cutting some of it out. And then on the back side, we shaved it down so that there was a little bit more space there. We were able to retain some of that material, and I think really importantly, this little cross piece to help with some of that structure. So we're gonna fit this back on the car and see how everything goes. And if there's any other adjustments we need to make, then we'll do that. We've got the intercooler sitting in place, connected to the radiator, and now we're gonna put this frame on. I just wanna point out the grommets are down here. Make sure that the grommets didn't come out on your old intercooler. Make sure they're on both sides. And then we're gonna put this between the condenser and the intercooler. And we're gonna have to set the frame down and then lift the intercooler into where those grommets are. There we go. And then 2, 3, 2, 3. Yeah, just swing that back up in there. We have the intercooler in, and you can see some of the paint markings that we had mentioned before about cutting. We've got the condenser on here. All these are in. One thing that I noticed about getting this condenser back in is that you're gonna be fighting with the top of this frame here. And you can flex this up just a little bit to get it tucked back in there, to get these tabs in place correctly. I think I feel really comfortable with what we've left, at least in terms of the material. It is still making contact in places and it's bowing out a little bit, but I feel better about having more material there for the frame and its support. So we added just a little bit of electrical tape here on this side because there was a bit in the instructions about some rattling, and we didn't want to put a self-tapper screw in because I also don't have one. And then this is seated over here properly. So now we're at a point where we're just going to literally be putting the puzzle back together and reassembling. All right, we've got the clamps on the hoses now. Grant made a good point. When we took these off, we should have put just a little paint mark on here to just indicate how tight the clamps were before, because this one will keep tightening and tightening, and I'm afraid we're gonna over tighten it. The other one, I got to a point where it felt nice and tight. I could see that it compressed the material, and I feel like that it's on there tight enough. All right, we are working on getting this baby back together, tightening up some stuff. Get out of my way. We've got the 3 bolts on these brace pieces here. There's also, remember, the 3 bolts on the headlights. There's the one here, the one back here that actually just slides into like a U shape, and then the third one down here on the side, little stainless steel guy. We added a couple of safety zip ties just in case this hood release decides to break like mine did once before. So that's just a safety item. And now what are we doing next? I think the bumper cover and grill. Yeah, the fresh air duct. Then we're like done. Just more screws to put on. Fortunately, we have them all organized right here. All right, we did it. The intercooler is in. If you're not using the cardboard trick just to keep all of your stuff together, like that made this go so much faster. There is some finessing and some lessons that I learned, and I think some good suggestions. The radiator frame and support, or the core support, might have some variations between the Mark 7, 7.5, R, and GTI. Take your time. Test fit, trim, and I think you'll end up with a pretty good result. I hope you enjoyed this.